Let us all rise.
That we have our very first investor in Vipingo Special Economic Zone, powered by Arise, Mr. Mark Bai and his team, Fortune Holdings, is going to set up the state-of-the-art ethanol plant in Vipingo Special Economic Zone, made through cassava. Mr. Bai is a very old investor in Kenya.
Distinguished guests, we are under no illusion about the pain points that have historically hindered investment. Infrastructure gaps, whether in roads, market access, water, or energy, have often made it difficult for investors to focus on their core business. Our special economic zones are designed to resolve these challenges decisively. By delivering world-class infrastructure within these zones, we ensure that investors can operate in an environment that rivals any in the world. We are also confronting head-on the challenges of bureaucracy and regulatory bottlenecks. Within the special economic zones, investors will benefit from streamlined processes with ease of access to requisite licenses and approvals, eliminating the red tape that has too often been a deterrent. Similarly, we recognize that the cost and reliability of power have been a major concern. Through the provision of captive power solutions, direct from generators to farms within special economic zones, we expect to reduce energy costs by a minimum of 30%, ensuring that our industries are competitive on a global scale. Equally important is our ongoing program of developing county aggregation industrial parks in every county in Kenya. These parks will serve as aggregation centers for raw materials, supplying farms in the special economic zones with reliable inputs for value addition, while providing steady incomes to local communities. Taken collectively, ladies and gentlemen, these initiatives form a coherent strategy to transform Kenya into the continental hub of sustainable, competitive, and future-ready investment. At the same time, today's event also speaks to Africa's broader destiny. The Africa Continental Free Trade Area is not merely a trade agreement. It is a continental vision of a single market of 1.4 billion people, as mentioned earlier. However, for Africa to truly benefit, we must move beyond exporting raw materials and instead add value here at home. By processing our tea, coffee, cocoa, horticulture, and livestock locally, and refining our cobalt, platinum, and manganese for green technologies, we can capture greater value, create millions of jobs, and secure Africa's rightful place in the global supply chains. Kenya is not merely talking about value addition. We are living it. we have completed a comprehensive leather sector investment package that demonstrates how the value of industry can grow tenfold from about $80 million to nearly $850 million within 5 years. And I talked about this leather piece earlier. 3 more investor packages for textiles and apparels, e-mobility, and business process outsourcing have also been completed and will be available to investors. Together, they form a blueprint for building end-to-end value chain ecosystems that create jobs, raise incomes, strengthen food chains, and position our counties as net exporters. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to commend Arise IIP and their partners for their vision, commitment, and confidence in Kenya. I wish we had as more confidence in our country as they do. Their partnership with Centum here in Vipingo Special Economic Zone, as well as their investment in Dongo Kundu and Naivasha, alongside the 700 million investment by Vision Invest, demonstrates that Kenya is a premier destination for serious transformative investment. Distinguished guests, it's only through ambitious and audacious projects like the Vipingo Special Economic Zone that we can transform Kenya, and indeed Africa, into advanced industrial economies within our lifetime. Nations such as Singapore, South Korea, and Malaysia have achieved this leap in just 1 or 2 generations at most, driven by bold vision and steadfast leadership. For too long, our own journey of transformation has been delayed by hesitation and shortfalls in leadership. Today, we must rise to the occasion. We must summon the courage to change our country and our continent. We can no longer have excuses. I am persuaded more than ever that with resolve, unity, and bold leadership, Kenya is firmly on the path to true transformation. The launch of the Vipingo Special Economic Zone is therefore not the end of the journey. It is the beginning of an ambitious new dawn. A new chapter of jobs for our young people, opportunities for our businesses, technology for our industries, and prosperity for our people. Together, let us seize this moment, unlock the promise of our people, and write the next chapter of Africa's industrial story, beginning here in Vipingo. I must commend Afri-Exim Bank, I must commend Arise, and now Kenya Commercial Bank for stepping up to making sure that this rare Vipingo Special Economic Zone becomes a reality. Across the world, from Shenzhen in China to Jebel Ali in Dubai, Subic Bay in Philippines, Hawassa in Ethiopia, Tanger Med in Morocco, and Kigali in Rwanda. Special economic zones are rewriting the story of industrial transformation and economic growth in our region. Kenya is well and truly on this path, not as a follower, but as a leader. Through our Special Economic Zones program, we are positioning our nation to leapfrog into industrialization, attract world-class investors, and deliver prosperity and opportunity for the Kenyan people. Today, Kenya boasts 38 designated special economic zones and 111 export processing zones, hosting 99 SEZ and 227 EPZ enterprises. Together, these zones have created more than 30,000 jobs for our young people. The Vipingo Special Economic Zone is expected to generate more than 30,000 direct jobs and thousands more indirectly, transforming livelihoods and driving regional growth. Ladies and gentlemen, our special economic zones represents more than just designated parcels of land. They are strategic assets, carefully designed and structured to attract investment while directly addressing the impediments that investors have long faced in our region. Kenya stands at the crossroads of opportunity, strategically positioned as the gateway not only to East Africa, but also to the entire Africa Continental Free Trade Area, a market of 1.4 billion people. This unique positioning offers investors seamless access to one of the fastest growing consumer and producer hubs in the world. Kenya's greatest resource, however, is its people. We have one of the most educated, competent, and tech-savvy workforces anywhere in the world, ready to apply their skills, creativity, talent, and innovation in the service of investors and their enterprises seeking to establish globally competitive enterprises here in Kenya. Beyond our human capital, Kenya is abundantly endowed with agricultural products and minerals that provide unmatched opportunity for value addition. Our globally renowned tea and coffee, fresh horticultural produce, sugar, livestock, dairy, and fisheries, as well as our minerals, including soda ash, fluorspar, rare earth, provide a strong base for industrial value addition. Another of our compelling comparative advantage is our energy. Today, 93% of our energy is generated from renewable sources: geothermal, wind, hydro, and solar. By 2020, we are determined to complete the transition to 100% green. This achievement places Kenya among only a handful of nations worldwide that can credibly offer investors a truly low-carbon industrial platform.
So I think the whole concept of Arise Industrial Zone is very simple, that how do we ensure that Africa stops exporting its raw material outside, and ensure how does it stop importing all the finished goods? Because by doing that, we are just exporting jobs out. So very specifically, and the President said, Gagan, what can we do to ensure we create a lot of jobs and to ensure that we retain value in the country? That's how we work with the President and his team to focus on this industrial zone. This industrial zone, a key focus is going to be in textile sector. So we discussed we'll be looking to start a large textile plant before end of October. We hope President will be back here to launch the foundation stone of the textile plant. The textile plant will be creating about 30,000 direct jobs. To put in perspective, Kenya imports about $2.2 billion of textiles a year. I mean, for a country with so much youth, we can't be sending our money and saying that we'll import finished products. Similarly, the other sectors that we are going to focus is on electronics, and we have some investors who are looking to do that. Also, Spiro, the e-mobility bikes, will be manufactured here. So we have a host of companies already lined up that will be doing manufacturing here. As a background, Arise has done this before. So Arise started in Gabon, and Gabon used to export round locks. There we have moved from exporting round locks to finished product. Something similar we have done in 14 other countries. So we have done in Benin textile transformation, in Chad meat processing, in Nigeria, in DRC, in Congo Brazzaville, multiple countries. We are very proud that we are going to repeat this success here. And we look forward to all the support of the Kenyan present here to make it a success.
We have a big youth bulge, educated. We spend close to 650 billion Kenyan shillings, about $5 billion every year, to educate our young people. We push into the job market 1 million young people every year. And as we train them, as we spend money in teaching, training, and educating our young people, we must equally think about the pipeline. When they come out of school, out of college, out of university, what do they do? So special economic zones speaks to the answer of creating jobs, creating value, and making sure that we become an export of finished products and not raw materials. So it is, special economic zones is at the heart of the bottom-up economic transformation agenda, where we are looking at the millions of young people who do not have jobs at the bottom of the pyramid, the many farmers who get stranded with their cotton, with their tea, with their coffee, where they have to sell with prices that do not add value to what they are doing. That is our overall agenda.
Wonderful. The private sector, but also for the local communities, call to action so that the special economic zones can become the backbone of Africa's industrial transformation. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, my good friend, Mr. Holt. I mean, listening to these good people here, I wish I had them every day to speak to the people of Kenya. Because because what they're saying is music to my ears. It's what I keep, saying. Look at what Professor Orama has said about how do we mobilize domestic resources. Why is Afrexim Bank, a local bank, local in the sense that it is African? It understands us better. They ask us less questions because they understand us. He's just said, we get our own money, we put it in some institutions out there. When you want to borrow that money from them, they tell you you are a risky borrower. This is your money. It is okay for them to keep it, but it's not okay for them to lend it to you. That tells you we must have some local solutions. And it is, Professor, what I have been pushing in our country. We've had not a very good culture of savings. Our National Social Security Fund is among the smallest in our region. Now we have changed that. We are growing our pool of patient money, our pool of savings, our pool of money in our pension funds. Just in one pension fund, the National Social Security Fund, we have doubled in the last 2 years the money in that fund. And we will triple it by 2027. We'll have 1 trillion shillings in that fund. That is how we are going to create a pool of money which we can use for...
We've moved mountains and disbursed tens of billions of dollars to support the continent. What can we do to support further Kenya, but also the industries coming into the zones? Thank you.
No, thank you very much, Amadou. The strategy we established when I became president had 4 key pillars. 3 are important here. One of them is industrialization and export development. The other key one is intra-African trade and AfCFTA promotion, all linked. When we set up this strategy, or before we did that, we studied the industrial landscape, what ought to be done for us to be able to make any impact. We found that a key issue for industries in Africa is infrastructure that will make sure they produce competitively. So we knew that the answer to that is what others had done, especially China and others, is to build industrial zones, special economic zones, because that would be the fastest way of dealing with the infrastructure problem and then set the pace for expanding the good infrastructure to the rest of the economy. If you wanted to wait for the investments that will go throughout the economy so that everywhere is good for industrialization, you wait for too long, because Africa required about at that time, about $110 billion every year for the 10 years to be able to build the infrastructure it needed. Africa did not have that money. So we knew the industrial parks would be the way to go. But we also knew that to attract anybody to the industrial parks, we needed to have a comprehensive solution. It's not just building the infrastructure, but also making sure that you provide all the facilities and assistance that will make somebody coming there to focus on producing. Because what we normally see on the continent is that people come there, they have so many other things to contend with, which are not related to their main core business. But we also recognize that to do industrial parks, after doing the survey, we needed somebody who knew how to do those things. Luckily, since 2010, we had been working with Arise, providing loans, and we saw what they had done successfully in Gabon, and also starting then to do in Benin. So we decided that the best thing was to do a partnership. But beyond that partnership, we had to provide other solutions. And those other solutions meant we had to make sure that anybody coming to those industrial parks had to have the money to complement the equity they provide. We had to also be able to have an equity fund that is not scared of Africa, that would go along with them, because we know that if you're telling somebody from China, from Kazakhstan to go to Africa to invest money, we have to first put our leg in the water. And that's what our fund was intended to do, to show them that we will not bring you where we will not go to. We also knew that trade finance was critical. That's our bread and butter. So we had to make it available, but make it in a specialized way. We then also knew that payment services, insurance services, and all those things were necessary, including a very important thing we always neglect, testing and inspection centers. And I forgot to mention it, Mr. President, we are going to build a testing and inspection center here to enable goods produced here to be tested and not to be sent to other continents where they are tested, so that producers spend 2 weeks waiting for results before they can export. We'll put an end to that. We're already doing that in other parts of Africa. So we need all of this, so that's this comprehensive solution we provide. And as I had discussed with the President, a President Bank Office will come here to support these activities. We commit every year for the industrial park development about $3 billion every year in our plan. So, and then the other things, we do them in line with the specific objectives for the year. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Oram. Professor Carlos Lopez, who also does not need any introduction. Professor Lopez, you've seen many successful industrial parks around the world, whether it's in Asia, Latin America, but you've seen also the failures. What do you think we should do to make sure that our industrial parks generate jobs and really enable us to create value? Thank you.
Thank you, Amadou. I have known Gagan since the time he was thinking about how to accelerate industrialization. And I was then leading the Economic Commission for Africa and putting a lot of effort on the conceptual reasons why Africa needed to accelerate industrialization. So let me use that question to talk about the why, the what, and the how. The why is because Africa has 35 countries in the category of highly commodity exporters dependency. That is the highest in the world, and it's basically a reproduction of the colonial model, where we'll export commodities without transformation. So that reality hits us because after 6 decades of development efforts, it's very difficult to justify that we are still there. And one of the reasons is because our macroeconomic system, our policy environment is geared towards meeting external obligations, not real transformation. So we are always trying to find money to pay sovereign debt and so on. In fact, our debt to GDP ratio in general in Africa is about 60%, half of OECD countries. But the reason it's so difficult is because sources of revenue are extremely limited. To start with, we don't control the prices of our commodities. So therefore, our number one economic value is already hampered by the way the system works. So the only way we can get out of it is to industrialize. So that's the what. But the what needs a bit of definition. Precisely because of the experiments of the past, we are the latecomers. So we are the last ones to come to the party. And we have to learn not to be a landing strip, but a launching pad. And this is a very different prospect. If you are a landing strip, which is just going to incrementally do what you have learned from others. No. The moment requires a completely different take, requires a different way of doing industrialization. When you are a latecomer, you have a lot of problems. Your regulatory system is much more complex. Your access to capital more limited. The intellectual property regimes are not going to be favorable. You can go on with the list. Not to mention your internal conditions, like your skill set, your infrastructure, your access to energy in particular, can all become real challenges that will not allow you to do proper industrialization. And that has been used as an excuse to keep pushing us, policy-wise, to be much more on diversification of the economy than industrialization. That's what we are told by the experts. So what is diversification? It can be, diversify from cocoa to coffee or from tea to coffee. That's diversification. But it doesn't change structurally the economy. So how are we going to change it? And why do we need to change it? And that's the why. The why is because we need jobs. We need jobs. Now, creating jobs in the industrial sector nowadays is not an easy task. It requires a different approach. The first thing we have to learn from the mistakes of the past is that we need an ecosystem. And that's why Arise has integrated in its tagline. Yes, it needs to be an ecosystem because we need financial innovation, we need tech-savvy logistics, we need climate-smart interventions, we need a whole array of issues that are going to position us differently. And that's what is on offer. Now, you can look into the experiments of Asia, very successful, because they created within the special economic zones or industrial parks a sort of a propeller for a lot of activities around. Where you can look into Latin America, where most of the experiments were about just, incrementalism, not integrating with the value chain around the country, and therefore becoming a bit what in Mexico they call the maquiladoras, which is basically, you put the last touch, but you don't transform structurally. So we have to avoid those mistakes. And to avoid those mistakes, we need an integrated system. And that's what Arise has been successful in doing so far.
Thank you very much, Professor Lopez. Arise has been able to do that over the last 14 years. Gagan, you've been very successful in Central Africa and West Africa. Now we are here in Kenya. How can we sort of scale today's project, replicate it in Kenya, but also across Africa? What kind of gaps do you see that governments and DFIs can step in to fill? Thank you.
Thanks, Amadou. I think I'll first start by saying the industrialization does not pass through just by people sitting here. The industrialization actually passes through all of you sitting here. And what I mean is, I think every time you buy some product, be it your ordinary toothpaste, be it your shoe, be it your clothes, be it anything you use, please ask yourself, are you buying something made in Africa or not? Because that is where the industrialization will start. So I think the first mentality that I want to really push through is that every day we should ask ourselves, are we buying made in Africa or not? And I'll use this forum to request President, maybe President, you need to mandate that twice a week, everybody should we are made in Kenya. So that everybody is forced to be made in Kenya, and that's how we drive the demand. Because I think all the time we think of exporting products, we need to think of what we can consume locally, made in locally. Very specifically, Amaru, to your question, I think from a rice perspective, when we look at developing an industrial ecosystem, what we really look at seeing is how can we ensure that we can produce goods competitively? And that competitive production comes because of multiple things. Availability of raw materials, so we ensure what the country has, which we can transform. Secondly, building all the infrastructure that makes it competitive. So ensuring the power is at the right price, ensuring the utilities like effluent treatment is the right price. Thirdly, ensuring that we have trained manpower which is productive. So putting the vocational training center, so we have trained people, so when industries hire them, the productivity is right. And once you do all this, along with the strong marketing, you get a competitive ecosystem. And at the same time, we focus where the product is going to go. So for example, if we are, as we're talking about, we focus on textile in this industrial zone, because we know Kenya is a $2.2 billion import market. So you clearly have a market here. So when you start producing, it easily becomes, viable. Similarly, if you think of the Boda Boda industry, 1.2 plus million Boda Bodas officially. I mean, all of them are imported today. And to put in perspective, 1.2 million Boda Bodas represent roughly about $2.4 billion of, product. Why we need to import that? If you think of fuel, and one of the investors are here, we import the fuel, but we have all the manpower we have. We can produce cassava or we can produce other feedstock, convert into bioethanol. And what the state needs to do, it has a 10% bioethanol policy or a biofuel policy. So suddenly, you have decreased your FX bill, you have produced something which is locally given jobs. So Amadou, to summarize, we really think of industry, what is required for it to be competitive, bring all those elements along with the policy and the government framework, along with the financing to make it work.